She ran without looking back. The night was moonless, which was why she had chosen it. The forest floor was wet from the evening rain, and her bare feet found every root and stone, but she did not slow down. Behind her she could hear nothing yet, but she knew that silence in the dark was not safety. It was only the gap between the moment someone realized she was gone and the moment they started running after her. She had one thing in her hands, just one, a head wrap she had worn on the morning of her wedding, the morning she had believed, with the whole of her young heart, that her life was beginning. She had been wrong about what was beginning, but she was not wrong now. And the grove, the sacred Osun Grove that the women at the market had spoken of in voices below speaking, was somewhere ahead in this dark. If she could reach it, if her body held, if the men her husband would send did not reach her first. Stay with me, dear friends, because this is the story of Adunola, and it begins not in this forest, but 3 months earlier, on the morning her father told her that a good man had asked for her hand. Before we continue, if you are new to Helen's Cultural Stories, welcome. Please like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss a story rooted in African truth and African wisdom. These stories belong to us. Now, let us go back to the beginning. Adunola was 23 years old when her father called her to the front room. She came quickly, the way she always came when her father called, with the expectation of something ordinary, a task, a question, a small family matter that required her presence but not her worry. What she found instead was a conversation already in progress between her father and 2 older men she did not recognize. There was kola nut on the table. Palm wine had been poured. These were not the signs of an ordinary afternoon. Her father's face, when he looked at her, held the specific expression of a man who believes he is giving his daughter something valuable. He said, "Adunola, a good man has asked for you. His name is Deji. He has a compound, cattle, and the respect of his community. His people came this morning with a proper proposal, and I have given my consideration. I believe this is a good match." Adunola looked at her father. She looked at the kola nut on the table. She looked at the 2 men who were watching her with the patient certainty of people who have already decided how this conversation ends. She asked, when? She met Deji 3 times before the wedding. Each time he was courteous. Each time he brought something, kola for her father, fabric for her mother, a small gift of dried pepper that he presented with the kind of careful thoughtfulness that makes a family say, "This is a man who pays attention." He was not handsome in the way that makes a young woman forget to think. He was ordinary looking, broad-shouldered, calm-faced, with hands that looked like they had worked, and a voice that was low and unhurried. He said the right things. He asked about her health, her interests, whether she preferred to cook with red palm oil or yellow. Her mother watched these meetings with the careful attention of a woman who has been married a long time and knows that the version of a man who comes courting is not always the version who lives in the compound afterward. But she saw nothing that alarmed her, and so she said nothing that cautioned. The wedding was arranged for the dry season. The bride price was agreed. The fabric for Adunola's wedding clothes was purchased. Everything moved forward with the pleasant momentum of a thing that has been decided. Nobody asked Adunola if she was afraid, so she did not say that she was. The wedding was everything it was supposed to be. The compound filled with singing and drumming that lasted until the fires burned low. Her mother pressed her face between both hands before she was led away, the way mothers do when they are trying to memorize something. Her father stood at the gate and watched her go with the expression of a man who has done what he believed was right and is hoping very hard that he was correct. Adunola walked into Deji's compound as his wife. She would not describe in detail what happened in the hours that followed. Some things belong only to the person they happen to, and the words for them do not exist in any language that was made for polite conversation. What can be said is this. Before the first night was over, she understood that the man who had brought kola nut to her father's house and asked about her preference for palm oil was not the man who lived inside these walls. She lay very still in the dark afterward and listened to the compound sounds, a dog somewhere, the wind in the oil palms, a child coughing in the neighboring hut, and she thought, I did not know. But the morning came regardless, and with it came his expectation that she would rise and fetch water and start the fire and cook and sweep and carry on. So she did. This became the shape of her days. By morning she was a wife, functional, present, moving through the compound tasks with the practiced efficiency of a woman who has been raised to manage a household. She greeted his relatives with the correct respect. She cooked his food to the temperature he preferred. She swept the courtyard so that not a leaf remained by the time visitors might arrive. By night she was something else, something that did not have a word in any language she had been taught, because the women who made those languages had agreed, by a long and collective silence, not to name it. Each morning she rose, and each morning she felt the specific weight of a body that has been given no time to recover from the night before. Each morning she moved through the compound, with her face arranged in the expression of a wife who is managing well. She was not managing well, but there was no language for what she was, and no law that addressed what was being done to her, and no door in that compound that led anywhere her husband could not follow. She told herself, "This will change. People change. Perhaps there is something I am doing wrong that I could correct." She corrected nothing, because there was nothing to correct. And the nights continued. The compound walls were made of dried earth, which had the quality of absorbing sound in some weather and carrying it in others. She discovered this on the seventh night, when she heard, through the wall between her sleeping room and the neighboring hut, the sound of the elderly woman next door shifting on her sleeping mat. The old woman had heard too. She had to have heard. The walls were that thin. This knowledge, that she was not simply suffering, but suffering where it could be heard, added a layer to everything that is almost impossible to describe to someone who has not felt it. Shame is not the same thing as guilt. Guilt is for what you have done. Shame is for what has been done to you. Dressed in the clothes of guilt, wearing its face in the mirror every morning while you arrange your own face to go outside. Adunola became very good at arranging her face. She stopped speaking to the neighboring women more than was necessary. She moved through the market quickly when she was sent for provisions, with her eyes on the ground and a pace that suggested she had somewhere to be. She was trying to take up as little space as possible in the world, so that the world would have less of her to see. It was not working. In the 6th week of her marriage, on a market day when Deji was attending to business in the next village, Adunola walked to her father's compound. She had not planned what she would say. She had walked there on an instinct older than planning, the instinct of a hurt animal that returns to the place where it was safe. Her mother saw her face at the gate. She did not ask questions first. She brought her inside. She brought water. She sat close and said nothing for a long time, and the nothing she said was the most useful thing anyone had offered Adunola in 6 weeks. Then, when Adunola had told her, not everything, but enough, her mother called her husband. Baba Adunola listened. His face did what faces do when a man is hearing something he cannot fix and cannot bear. Then he was quiet for a very long time. When he spoke, his voice was careful in the way of a man choosing every word against what the words will cost. He said, "My daughter, I would bring you home this moment if I could, but the bride price has been paid and received. Under our law, a wife does not leave her husband's compound without his formal consent and without the return of what was paid. Your mother and I do not have that sum. If we take you without it, Deji's family will have a claim against ours that could destroy everything we have built." He stopped. He said, "I am telling you the law, not because I believe the law is right. I am telling you because I need you to understand what is between you and leaving." Her mother held her at the gate for a long time before she let her go. She pressed 3 things into Adunola's hands: a small pouch of dried eed, the crayfish she knew her daughter loved, a cloth to replace the one she had torn on the walkover, and a look that said everything the law would not permit her actions to say. Adunola walked back to Deji's compound in the afternoon heat. She walked slowly. Not from exhaustion, though she was exhausted, but because each step that brought her closer to that gate was a step she was making with the full knowledge of what waited inside, and her body was doing what bodies do when the mind instructs them to continue, and they carry on regardless. She entered the compound. She went to the kitchen. She started the evening fire. Deji came home at nightfall. He ate. He said nothing about her absence. He had either not noticed or not cared. Adunola sat in the kitchen after he had eaten, and she looked at the fire until it was coals, and she understood something that settled into her like a stone settling into still water. Nobody was coming. If she was going to be free, she was going to have to find the door herself. She heard it on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks later. She was at the market for palm oil and guinea pepper, moving through the stalls with her eyes down and her pace unhurried, when she heard two women speaking in the space between a fabric seller and a yam pile. They were not speaking to her, they were speaking to each other, in the low voices of women who are sharing something that is not for everyone. She slowed without appearing to slow. One woman said, "There is a grove, the Osun Grove, the sacred one in the deep forest past the Ataoja's boundary. My grandmother told me that the priestesses there, the women of Osun, are bound by the law of the goddess herself to shelter any woman who reaches the boundary. Any woman whose belonging crosses the threshold of that grove cannot be reclaimed by any man, not a husband, not a father, not even a chief." The other woman said, "But how does a woman get there without her husband knowing?" The first woman said, "She goes in the dark, she goes when she must, and she does not look back." Adunola moved past them without changing her pace, but everything inside her had changed. She did not rush. This surprised her, later, the patience of it. But she understood, in the way that people in danger develop a specific and practical clarity, that rushing would undo her. One wrong step, one question asked to the wrong person, one change in her daily pattern that Deji noticed and questioned. She spent the following 2 weeks listening, not asking, listening, at the market, at the well, in the spaces between conversations that were not meant for her, but that reached her anyway, because women in compounds speak to each other in the ways available to them, and those ways often travel further than intended. She learned the direction of the grove. She learned approximately how many hours' walk it was from the edge of the village. She learned that the boundary of the grove was marked by 3 trees of a specific type that grew nowhere else, and that the threshold was an archway of woven branches that the priestesses maintained. She learned one more thing that she held very carefully, that a woman whose belonging, any belonging, however small, crossed into the sacred boundary ahead of her, could claim the grove's protection even if she herself had not yet entered. She thought about this for several days. Then she began to prepare. She gathered slowly, nothing that would be missed immediately. A small portion of dried fish wrapped in a broad leaf, set aside from her cooking allocation over 4 days. A second cloth, folded thin and tucked beneath the sleeping mat. Her good sandals, moved to the bottom of a basket of grinding stones where they would not be seen. She chose the item she would carry in her hand, the head wrap from her wedding morning, the one she had worn on the last day she had believed she was safe. She did not know when she chose it exactly why this particular thing, only that it felt right in the way that things feel right when you are not choosing from your mind. Deji watched her in those 2 weeks with a quality of attention that was not his usual inattention. He did not say anything, but she felt his watching, and she understood that a man who has lived by his own rules for a long time develops a sensitivity to the air of the compound changing. She moved carefully, she smiled when it was required, she cooked well, she swept well, she was to every visible measure a wife who was managing. She chose her night, she waited for it. The night she chose was a new moon, the darkest of the month. She lay beside Deji until his breathing changed into the slow, heavy rhythm of a man who has eaten well and expects his world to continue exactly as he has arranged it. Then she lay still for another full hour, counting her own breaths. Then she rose. She moved with the absolute stillness of a woman who has been practicing the geometry of this room in her mind for 2 weeks. Every piece of furniture, every creak in the floor, the exact angle of the doorway. She had rehearsed this in the dark of her own closed eyes, until the path from sleeping mat to compound gate was as familiar as the path from compound gate to well. She did not take everything she had gathered, only what she could carry quietly and quickly. The cloth, the dried fish, her good sandals, which she put on only after she was through the gate, and the head wrap in her right hand. She stepped out of the compound gate into the dark. The forest was ahead of her. She started walking. The forest at night is not the forest in the afternoon. The afternoon forest was familiar. She had collected firewood at its edges, had walked the path to the market through its outer corridors, had learned to read the sound of its birds as a clock for the time of day. The night forest was something older and less interested in being useful. She walked by, feel modern sight, one arm slightly forward, her feet reading the ground before she committed her weight. She had wrapped the cloth around her shoulders against the cold that came off the trees, and she held the headwrap in her closed fist, because losing it was not something she was willing to consider. An hour in, something moved in the undergrowth to her left, and she stopped completely, her heart doing what hearts do when the body understands a threat before the mind has processed it. The movement stopped. She waited. She walked on. Her feet found a root, and she went down hard on her right knee. She made no sound. She stood up, she walked on, she thought, this is what you chose, keep going. By the third hour she had eaten the dried fish, not from hunger, but from the knowledge that carrying it was weight she did not need. By the fourth hour she was aware of her right knee in a way that suggested the fall had done more than bruise it. She adjusted her weight to her left side and walked on. By the fifth hour the hunger she had swallowed arrived in full, and with it came the specific lightheadedness of a body that has been running on adrenaline and has now run through its reserves. She sat against a tree for 4 minutes. She counted them. She thought about Deji's compound, about the smell of the kitchen in the morning, about the way the walls were thin enough to carry sound. She stood up, she walked on. Somewhere in the 6th hour, she could not say exactly when, because time in the dark forest had stopped being organized into reliable units, she heard something that was not forest sound. Voices, distant, but moving in her direction. She did not stop to confirm what she had heard. She moved faster. They had found her gone. She did not know how. Whether Deji had woken and reached for her and found the sleeping mat empty, or whether some compound instinct had pulled him from sleep, it did not matter. What mattered was the sound of men moving through the forest behind her, carrying what sounded like a torch, because she could see the faintest variation in the darkness behind her that was not the forest's own darkness. She was not going to outrun them. She understood this with a cold practicality that she was grateful for, because panic would have cost her the only thing she had left, which was thought. She was not going to outrun them, but the grove, if she had read the directions correctly, was not far now. She had been walking 6 hours, and the women at the market had said the grove was no more than 6 hours from the village edge at a walking pace. She was close. She moved through the forest with everything her body had left, which was not much, but was apparently enough for now, which was all she needed it to be. And then, between 2 trees, in a gap that the darkness had not fully closed, she saw the shape of something that was not forest. 3 trees. They were enormous, taller than the other trees of the forest, with a quality of stillness around them that was different from the stillness of ordinary trees, the way a doorway is different from a wall even when both are made of the same material. Between the first 2 trees, an archway of woven branches, some fresh, some old, some already returning to the earth, marked a boundary that the ground itself seemed to acknowledge. The grass was different on the other side. The air smelled different. The Osun Sacred Grove. She was perhaps 30 paces from the archway. Behind her, the torchlight was closer than it had been. She could hear Deji's voice now. He was not shouting. He was giving instructions in the flat, controlled tone of a man who expects to be obeyed, and the sound of that voice, which she had heard in the dark of every night in his compound, did something to her body that bypassed every other calculation her mind was running. Her legs moved. 20 paces. 10. She heard a shout from behind her. Someone had seen her. She was 5 paces from the archway. Her knee gave. She did not fall. She stumbled, caught herself on one hand against the earth, and in the same motion she rose, and she raised her right arm, and she threw. The headwrap opened in the air the way cloth opens when it is released with speed, unfolding, reaching, catching the darkness. It crossed the threshold of the archway. It crossed, and it settled on the ground of the Osun Sacred Grove, on the other side of the boundary, in the space that no man's authority could reach. Adunola stood at the threshold with her hand extended and her chest heaving and one knee that had stopped working properly and her feet bare because one sandal had gone somewhere in the last 100 paces. Behind her, the torchlight was very close. And then, from inside the grove, from somewhere in the darkness beyond the archway, came a sound that was not wind and was not animal and was not anything that the forest had produced in the 6 hours she had been walking through it. It was the sound of women, moving toward her. They came from the dark of the grove like they had been waiting. 3 women in white wrappers, moving with the unhurried certainty of people who have done this before. Not once, not twice, but enough times that it has become a practice. a ritual, a response as automatic as the reflex of a hand drawing back from flame. The first woman, older than the others, with a wrapper tied differently, and a face that carried the specific authority of someone who has spent decades being the answer to impossible situations, stopped at the threshold of the archway. She looked at Adunola. She looked at the headwrap on the ground behind the boundary. She said, in a voice that was low and completely certain, "Your belonging has entered. You have entered. This grove claims you. No man may pass this boundary to reclaim what the goddess has received." Behind Adunola, Deji's voice said, "That is my wife. Step aside." The woman in white did not step aside. She did not raise her voice. She did not change her expression by any measure that Adunola could detect. She said, "She is not your wife tonight. Tonight she is Osun's." Adunola crossed the threshold. Her legs went. The women caught her. She woke on a sleeping mat that smelled of dried herbs. The light was early morning light, gray and cool and filtering through leaves so dense they turned it into something soft. A bird she did not recognize was making a sound at a regular interval that was so peaceful it seemed impossible that it had always existed in the same world as the compound walls and the thin-walled nights and the 6-hour walk through the dark forest. She lay still and she let the bird continue, and she thought, "I am alive, I am here. Nobody touched me last night." It was the first morning in 3 months that she had woken to that particular absence. The woman in white, whose name she would learn, was Aya Osun, the head of the grove's order, came at mid-morning and sat beside her without ceremony. She said, "You may stay as long as the process requires. You will work here as all women who come work. You will be fed, you will be safe. The pressure on your husband to release you properly will be applied through the correct channels. The chief, the elders, the weight of what it means to have a wife in Osun's custody." She said, "It takes time. Can you wait?" Adunola looked at her. She said, "I have already waited 3 months. Time I can do." The grove had its own order. Adunola learned it the way she had learned everything useful in her life, by watching first, asking second, and doing whatever she was shown, with the full attention of someone who understands that being useful is one way of being safe. There were 11 women in the grove when she arrived. They came from different villages and different stories, though the general architecture of those stories was similar enough that when women spoke to each other in the evenings, they often finished each other's sentences without meaning to. She ground pepper. She fetched water. She learned the prayers of the grove, not because she was required to, but because learning them gave her something to do with her mouth in the hours when her mind was loudest. The other women did not ask about her husband. They asked about her, what food she liked, whether she could braid hair, if she had learned to make the pepper soup with uziza leaf or without. She had never been asked so many ordinary questions in her life. She answered every one of them. Word reached the grove through Aya Osun's channels, as word always did. Deji had presented himself to the village elders demanding his wife's return. The elders had informed him that a woman who had claimed sanctuary at the Osun Grove was under the protection of the goddess, and that tradition was clear on this matter. He could not enter the grove, he could not send men into the grove, and he could not compel her return by any means available to him while she remained there. He had, apparently, not received this information with composure. Iya Osun relayed all of this to Adunola without drama. She said, "He will be angry for a while. Anger is what men have when they discover their power does not reach everywhere. Give him time to work through it. The elders are patient people, and they have managed angry men before." Adunola thought about the years she might be here. She thought about the grove's order, its rhythms, the 11 women, the bird she had learned to wake to every morning. She thought, "This is the first place I have lived in that is shaped by women. Everything in it makes sense to me." She found this thought surprising, and then she found it not surprising at all. 3 years is a long time and also not long at all, depending on what you are measuring it against. Measured against the nights in Deji's compound, 3 years in the Osun Grove was a different kind of time entirely, time that moved at a human pace, with rest in it, and ordinary mornings, and the gradual return of a self that had been compressed by months of fear into something much smaller than it was meant to be. She learned things, not only the grove's prayers and tasks. She learned from the women around her with the hunger of someone who has discovered that learning is what happens when fear stops taking up all the available space. She learned to read. Iya Osun taught her, in the evenings, from the old text the grove kept. She learned which plants healed fevers and which eased a particular bone-deep exhaustion of a body under long stress. She learned how to sit with another woman who was newly arrived and frightened and say nothing for a long time, because the nothing was what was needed. By the third year, she was one of the women who met the newcomers at the archway. She was one of the women who caught people when their legs went. And then one morning, Iya Osun came to find her with a different look on her face. She said, "It is done." Deji had, after 3 years of the elders' patient, consistent, culturally rooted pressure, the kind of pressure that does not shout but does not stop, agreed to the formal release. The document had been signed. The witnesses had attended. The bride price question had been resolved through negotiation that Iya Osun's representatives had participated in, with the same calm certainty with which they did everything. Adunola was free to leave the grove. She was no longer bound to Deji by any law or custom that could be enforced. She was, in the language of the documents the elders held, a woman returned to herself. She stood at the archway, from the inside this time, looking out, and she felt something she did not immediately have a name for. It was not joy exactly. It was larger than joy, and quieter than relief, and more durable than either. Iya Osun stood beside her. She said, "Where will you go?" Adunola said, "To my parents first. Then, I do not know yet, but I am not afraid of not knowing anymore. Not knowing is just the beginning of finding out." She picked up her bundle. She straightened her wrapper. She stepped through the archway. The forest in the morning was not the forest at night. She had known this abstractly, and she had walked through it in the daylight on the grove's errands before, but walking through it now, going toward rather than away, with a document in her bundle and no one pursuing her, and the sun making reasonable patterns through the leaves, this was a different walk. She thought about the girl who had run through this forest 3 years ago in the dark with one sandal and a bad knee and a headwrap in her fist. She thought about the specific courage of that girl, which had not felt like courage at the time. It had felt like desperation. She understood now that for most people, those two things are the same thing at the moment they happen and only reveal their difference in retrospect. She walked for 4 hours. When the edge of the village came into sight, the familiar rooftops, the market smells, the sound of a drum from somewhere she could not yet place, she stopped for a moment. She breathed. Then she walked in. Her mother was at the gate when she arrived. Not waiting. She had not been expected. She was simply there, the way mothers are sometimes simply in the right place at the right time, as if love has its own sense of direction. She looked at Adunola. She looked at her for a long moment, at the 3 years in her face, which were not entirely visible, but were entirely present if you knew what you were looking for. Then she opened the gate. She said, "Come in. You must be hungry." Adunola came in. She sat at the table where she had sat 10,000 times as a child. Her mother put food in front of her. Her father came from the back of the compound and stopped in the doorway and looked at her with the expression of a man who has been carrying something heavy for 3 years and has just been told he can set it down. Nobody said the important things immediately. They ate first. They sat together first. They let the ordinary rhythm of a family meal do the work that words would have done imperfectly. Then her father said, "I am sorry for what the law made me tell you." Adunola said, "The law was wrong. You were doing what you could inside a wrong thing. I know the difference." She did know the difference. That was one of the things 3 years had given her. It was 7 years after she had walked out of that grove that she saw the girl at the well. Adunola was 41 now and had a compound of her own. Not a large one, but hers, run on her terms, with the herbs she had learned from the grove growing in ordered rows along the eastern wall, and the old texts Iya Osun had given her on a shelf that visitors always noticed. The girl was perhaps 20. She was drawing water with the specific efficiency of someone who has learned to do tasks quickly to avoid being away from home for too long. She had a bruise along her jaw that she had covered with her head wrap, unsuccessfully. Adunola looked at her. She recognized everything. She drew her own water. She did not rush. She waited until the girl's bucket was full and the girl was about to lift it. Then she said, in a voice that was quiet and direct and exactly as low as it needed to be, "Do you know about the Osun Grove?" The girl looked at her. Adunola said, "3 trees, taller than the others, a woven archway, 6 hours walk from the village edge, heading east at the old boundary stone." She said, "Take something you value in your hand. When you reach the archway, throw it through. That is enough." She said, "The grove claims what enters it, and what the grove claims, no man can take back." The girl was very still. She said, "How do you know this?" Adunola said, "I know this because someone at a market 7 years ago was speaking to her friend in a voice lower than speaking, and I happened to be between a fabric seller and a yam pile." She said, "The women before me did not intend to tell me. They were just telling each other. But the telling reached me because I needed it to reach me." She looked at the girl. She said, "I am telling you directly because I do not want you to need to happen to overhear. I want you to know. I want you to have the knowledge in your hands and to be able to do with it exactly what you choose, on whatever night you choose." The girl's eyes were filling. Adunola said, "Do not cry here, not where anyone can see, not yet. Do the things you have to do today, and the day after if you need it, and the day after that. And when the night comes and you decide, go east. 3 trees, the woven archway." She lifted her bucket. She walked home. This is the story of Adunola of the Yoruba Hills. But her story belongs to every woman who has ever sat in a compound in the dark and understood that nobody was coming and decided to go herself. Here is what this story teaches, dear friends, and it is not a simple lesson, so I will not make it simple. The first thing it teaches is that courage rarely looks like courage from the inside. From the inside, it looks like desperation. It looks like a bad knee, and 1 sandal and a headwrap in a fist, and 6 hours of dark forest and the sound of men behind you. It does not feel like strength. It feels like the last available option. But from the outside, from the distance of time, it is the bravest thing a person can do. The second thing it teaches is that sanctuary exists, not always where you expect it, not always in the shape you imagined, but it exists, and it exists because women who suffered before you created it and maintained it and passed the knowledge of it forward. The grove did not build itself. Iya Osun and her predecessors built it, one woman's need at a time. The third thing is the most important. Adunola did not keep the knowledge. She gave it away, at a well, in a low voice, to a girl with a covered bruise, and that girl would tell someone else, in a low voice, at a well or a market or a compound wall. This is how women survive, not alone, in a chain of whispers, each one reaching the person who needs it. Be part of the chain, dear friends. Pass on what has saved you. Dear friends, if you have stayed with Adunola until the very end, thank you with everything I have. Helen's cultural stories exist to carry the wisdom, the courage, and the truth of Africa forward. These are not just old stories. They are maps. They were drawn by women who needed them and left them behind for women who would need them too. If this story found you today, please share it with one person. Drop a comment and tell me which moment stayed with you, and tell me where in this beautiful world you are watching from tonight. I read every single one. Subscribe and turn on the bell. We are here every week. And before you go, click on the video on your screen right now. Another powerful African story is waiting for you. Be part of the chain, dear friends. Good night.